Welcome to today's deep dive. So usually, winning wars means your empire gets bigger, right? But in 16th century Ethiopia, Emperor Sarsa Dengel achieved these, brilliant tactical victories, and yet he actually permanently shrank his borders.
Yeah, it's a fascinating paradox to look into.
Right. And today, we're taking you through official royal chronicles like the Historia, alongside this surprisingly objective text called the Zenahu Gala, to basically unpack why winning the battle cost him the map.
I mean, we really have to remember the context. He inherited an absolute nightmare, taking the throne at just 14 years old.
14? Wow.
Yeah, just a kid, really. And he's immediately facing an expanding Ottoman Empire pushing inland from the Red Sea, alongside, treacherous northern nobles like Barnegus Yeshak, who actually teamed up with the Ottomans to overthrow him.
That is wild. It kind of reminds me of a failing tech startup that only survives by aggressively stealing a rival's technology. Because Sarsa Dengel, he synthesizes traditional Ethiopian heavy cavalry with early firearms.
Exactly. He took the early matchlock firearms that the Portuguese brought over, combined them with captured Turkish cannons, and suddenly, boom, his traditional cavalry had devastating fire support.
So he just takes the Ottomans' own gunpowder edge and uses it against them.
Right, and it culminates in the 1578 Battle of Adikoro. He completely crushes Yushak, shatters Turkish territorial ambitions, and destroys the Ottoman fort at Debarwa.
So he totally secures the north. But while his eyes are fixed on the Ottomans up there, there's this massive demographic tide rising in the south.
Yeah, that bulky, cannon-laden army was perfect for crushing static Ottoman forts, but that exact same heavy military became a huge liability when he had to face a totally different lightning-fast threat in the south.
Which brings us to the Oromo migrations. And for you listening, if you're wondering how a decentralized group consistently outmaneuvers a massive cannon-armed empire, you really have to look at their logistics.
Oh, absolutely. They utilized the Gada system. Instead of a standing army that needed to, draft and feed farmers, the Gada system dictated a man's societal role by his age bracket.
Wait, so your age literally determined your job?
Exactly. When men hit a specific age, their sole societal duty became warfare. They essentially biologically baked a highly mobile, dedicated military force into their culture.
Wow, and they're just completely outpacing the lumbering Ethiopian state.
Right, which forces this world historical decision in 1580. Facing a two-front war, Sarsa Dengel actually abandons the southern agricultural provinces.
He just leaves them.
Pretty much. And instead, he launches brutal crusades against the Beta Israel, which are the Ethiopian Jews, and the indigenous Aga. He actually claims he'd rather fight the, quote, enemies of Christ than the Oromo.
Okay, I have to ask, though. Did he actually believe he was fighting a holy war, or was that just royal PR to cover up a massive strategic blunder? Because maybe the Oromo were just simply too hard to fight.
Well, here is where those two sources we mentioned earlier really clash. The official royal Historia frames these attacks on the Aga as this, glorious divine crusade.
Yeah, the state propaganda.
Exactly, but the Zenahu Gala objectively points out the mechanics of what actually happened. To fund his massive military machine, he slaughtered and enslaved those local populations.
Oh, man, you can see the tragic irony here. By destroying those local groups, he inadvertently hollowed out his own buffer regions.
Yeah, he created a massive geopolitical vacuum. Without that indigenous resistance, the Oromo easily and permanently settled the south.
So his own state violence basically paved the way for his empire's demographic loss.
Exactly. Bleeding territory in the south, he retreats northward and decides to build an unassailable cultural and architectural core. He builds Guzara Castle with its distinctive egg-shaped roofs.
Oh, and that literally births the famous Gondarine architectural style.
It does, and he also fiercely protects the Orthodox Church by freezing out Catholic Jesuits who wanted to pull Ethiopia under papal supremacy.
Plus, economically, he engineers a massive geopolitical buffer. Doesn't he have the Inaria Kingdom's heavy gold tribute?
Yeah, as a direct reward for them converting to Christianity en masse.
That is just a masterstroke. He basically buys himself an ideologically aligned buffer state.
He really did. But, he couldn't outmaneuver everything. In 1597, exhausted from decades of war, he stubbornly ignores a strict prophecy from local monks.
Good, I love this part. They warned him not to eat fish from a specific river, right?
Yep. He eats the fish anyway, contracts dysentery, and dies.
Such a mythic, almost preventable end for a warrior king.
Truly. Sarsa Dengel successfully forged a highly centralized, culturally robust, early modern Ethiopian state. But the cost of that internal stability was permanently shrinking the map.
Which brings us right back to that glaring split in the source material. We have the state's divine propaganda in the Historia, trying to justify these terrible strategic losses, versus the objective sociological realism of the Zina Hulagulla, showing us the reality on the ground.
It really makes you think about how history is written.
It does. And, just as a thought experiment for you listening, and we aren't taking any political sides here, just looking at the mechanics of information, it makes you wonder, if you subjected today's official government narratives to that same dual lens, what hidden realities would you uncover about our own society?
That is a fascinating question to leave on.
Definitely. Maybe expanding the map isn't the only way to win. Sometimes survival means deciding which parts of the map you're willing to let go of. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.